What have philosophers lacked? A sense of history, a knowledge of physiology, a goal in the future. The aim of this series has been to gain an understanding of the most important historical and physiological transformations of our species, viewed through a mythological lens. The purpose of this endeavor is to orient ourselves in modernity. If we have a rough understanding of where we are now and how we got here, then we can posit a goal in the future. This goal is Nietzsche's higher man, the Ubermensch. In this video, I want to briefly summarize the Our New Values series, give you my concluding thoughts, and discuss what comes next for the channel. In the first video in this series, I sought to outline the situation which we find ourselves in today. God is dead, the West is rapidly atrophying, and conservatism is insufficient. With God dead, our vision turns to man. What will man become? The transhumanist technocrats seek to overcome man through technology and leave biology behind. This is the future which we oppose. We instead posit the higher man, a biological superhumanism which does not exclude the use of various technologies, but remains faithful to the body, seeking to enhance, strengthen, and elevate it rather than overcome it. In the second video in this series, we returned to where it all began. With Eve's theft of knowledge, our species was born. With higher consciousness at his disposal, man, unlike the other animals, could disobey his instincts. Man became wise, but also wicked and deceitful, and acquired the worst illness: dissatisfaction with life, resentment against life, and shame at his own being. Man gained the ability to judge nature and impose morality upon her amoral will to life. To remedy this, Nietzsche prescribed a reanimalization of man, which is essentially a symbolic return to Eden. We should aspire to rid ourselves of the illnesses of shame, guilt, resentment, and life-denying moral systems. We should aspire towards nature, rather than seeking to subdue her, both outside and within. Cain's murder of his brother Abel shows the consequences of the fall and marks the victory of the agriculturalists over the pastoralists. Abel managed to maintain a free lifestyle as a pastoralist, while Cain was made sick, physically and psychologically, by his domesticated lifestyle as a farmer. Diet, health, and our relationship with the instincts shape our morality, individually and collectively. Today, the sickly bodies and pale faces of our priestly caste betray their noble words. They speak of justice and equality, but like Cain, what they seek is vengeance against life, against the beautiful and the good. Cain and Abel are not equal. Cain's desire to bring down Abel is not moral. It is his natural will to power, repressed and twisted against life itself. While the Genesis myths show us the negative consequences of our acquisition of consciousness, which resulted in a separation from nature and our animal past, the Prometheus myth shows us how consciousness, technology, and culture can be used to elevate our species. Within the beautiful, spacious architecture of Greece and Rome, their flourishing aristocracies allowed for theater, sculpture, the cultivation of physical excellence, and a rich religious life. Under the right conditions, those rare civilizations arise which allow for the development of higher types, spiritually and physically. Prometheus is also a prototype of the Overman. Prometheus's overflowing health allows him to affirm life, despite knowing that he is doomed to suffer eternal torment. Prometheus is a creator and sacrifices himself for his creation. Prometheus, like Dionysus, is the representation of a will so strong that it can bear any torment and still affirm life. The Dionysian mysteries were a celebration of life and elevation of life's deepest instincts: sexuality, the frenzy of creation, life eternally returning from destruction, just as the resurrected Dionysus did after he was torn to pieces. Civilization may allow for aristocratic cultures to flourish, but it comes with a price. The hunter-gatherer and pastoralist lifestyles go with the natural flow of nature, like a canoe on a river. But civilizations resist nature, like a castle in the sea. Inevitably, civilizations become decadent and they collapse. However, from each collapse, something is preserved. Such is the history of the so-called West, with various peoples and civilizations carrying on the torch after each collapse. It is our task to be like Deucalion and to preserve what we can through the flood of modernity. And when the storm passes, we will have our renaissance. One thing that can prevent the collapse of a civilization is its restoration by those who manage to reconnect with the instincts. Men like Hercules. The instincts can be destructive, but with his labors, Hercules justifies the destruction caused by his violent nature. Hercules thus redeems the evil inherent in human nature and makes a symbolic return to Eden, before guilt, before good and evil, before sin. In this way, Hercules too is a prototype of the Overman. In order to reconnect with the instincts and discipline them, you must confront and integrate your shadow. The shadow, individually and collectively, consists of all the instincts and parts of ourselves which must be repressed to conform to agricultural and industrial society. Since our instincts are often incompatible with our modern environment, they cause us to suffer and we become distrustful of them. Our consciousness, our souls, begins to mimic the structure of our cities, winding, claustrophobic alleys, hard to navigate, a maze. This causes the priestly ideal, the anti-life ideal which arises in sick organisms as a last attempt at the preservation of life, to eventually dominate all civilizations. Its counterpart is the heroic ideal, which seeks to wrestle with life rather than escape it. By wrestling with our shadow, we can reclaim our instincts and heal the neurosis caused by industrial society. To become the Overman, man must overcome his shadow. Christ mirrors Prometheus as a type of the Overman. Prometheus stole technology from Olympus, but Christ stole divinity from the priestly caste, gifting the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of life, to the people. Christ in Christian theology is the tree of life, and eating of his flesh once again marks a return to Eden. Christianity disciplined the European spirit to aim at a goal, a Superman, a God-man, and to seek to emulate this man. This prepared us to aim for the superhuman ideal of the Ubermensch. While Christ's birth marked the death of the old gods, or rather their transformation into demons, it was fated in the stars that the repressed pagan values would return. The dead Pan, who had not in fact died, but had become Satan, was released from his imprisonment in hell 1,000 years after the birth of Christ. Just as Christ reversed the pagan values, Zarathustra brings a second transvaluation of all values, and a destruction of the metaphysics of good and evil which were born out of Zoroastrianism. The death of the Christian God means the death of Christian morality, and all moralities founded upon it. Now a new God is rising, one born out of the pre-Christian values and ideals of the ancients. This new God, or God-man, is the Ubermensch. Now we arrive at modernity, and we see that the so-called progress of history is a lie. We are far below the ancient Greek, spiritually and physically. The type which proliferates today is the last man, an instinctually and spiritually sick creature of the herd. But a new type is rising among fitness, self-improvement, and health-oriented communities, and with them the heroic ideal returns. Now it is time for us to pursue the heroic ideal again, to affirm life and wrestle with life in pursuit of beauty, strength, and excellence, to aspire to be like the gods, to stand above man as man stands above the beasts. Modernity and its morality made me sick and weak, but the pre-Christian values which I found in the ancient heroic texts and celebrated in the pages of Nietzsche brought me back to health. Our new values do not aim at establishing any sort of universal morality, but rather at healing the souls of those whose instincts will not let them conform to the weakening conditions of modernity. The values, worldview, and practices which I will outline in my next series are for the nourishment and strengthening of the few who aim not at the universal morality of the herd, but at the Olympian heights of excellence, at the Ubermensch. What matters most now, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is the purposeful creation of higher types. I know there are those of you out there who have the same fire within you as I have within me, the insatiable lust for life, the drive for self-overcoming at any cost. The voice of nature calls us towards beauty and strength. In our hearts, the heroic ideal, like Dionysus torn to pieces, returns again from destruction. 1,000 times the tyrant's eagle may tear out our liver, and 1,000 times it will heal. That we exist despite the toxic conditions of modernity is proof of the eternal recurrence of life. In your hearts and in mine, the heroic ideal is rising again. Join me as we strive for the heights.